You know that feeling right before you're about to lose it. Your phone's blowing up. Your boss wants an answer you don't have. Someone just said something that made your chest go tight. And you can feel yourself about to react instead of respond. Most of us think the goal is to not feel that pressure at all. That's wrong. And the guy who figured out what to actually do about it wasn't a monk on a mountain. He was running an empire while his own generals plotted behind his back. That's Marcus Aurelius, Roman emperor from 161 to 180 AD, which sounds impressive until you realize what those 2 decades actually looked like. War on the Eastern Front, war on the northern border. A plague that killed millions, including probably his own co-emperor. A trusted general who declared himself emperor and tried to take the throne while Marcus was away. This wasn't a man theorizing about stress from a comfortable chair. He wrote his private notebook, what we now call Meditations, in military tents between campaigns, essentially talking to himself about how not to fall apart. It was never meant to be published. That's what makes it different from a self-help book. It's a man under real pressure, working out in real time how to hold himself together. And out of that, you can pull 5 rules that still hold up. Rule 1. Separate what's yours from what isn't. The foundation of everything, Marcus writes, traces back to his teacher's teacher, a former slave named Epictetus. And Epictetus's core idea is almost insultingly simple. Some things are within your power, and some things aren't. Your judgments, your intentions, your effort, your reactions, that's yours. Other people's opinions, the outcome of events, whether things go your way, none of that is yours. It was never yours. Marcus takes this and applies it constantly, especially when people around him are behaving badly. He reminds himself over and over that when someone insults him or betrays him or acts selfishly, that's information about them, not a problem he's required to solve emotionally. His job is to control his own response. That's it. Everything outside that boundary is, in his words, not his to command. This isn't passivity. People mishear this as don't care about anything. That's not what he's saying. He's saying, put your energy where it actually produces something. If you're gripping tightly to outcomes you can't control, how someone else will react, whether a deal closes, what people think of you, you're spending your composure on a battle you were never going to win. The pressure you feel is often not from the situation itself. It's from trying to control something that was never under your control to begin with. Rule 2. The obstacle becomes the path. Second idea, and this is probably the most quoted line from Marcus, though people usually get the shape of it wrong. He writes about how the mind can turn any obstacle into fuel, that what stands in the way of an action can actually become the action itself. Not everything happens for a reason in some mystical sense. Something closer to the obstacle is now the material you're working with. Think about what this actually meant for him. He didn't get to choose a peaceful reign. He got war, plague, betrayal. His philosophy wasn't ignore that and think positive. It was, this is now the job. The interruption is not a departure from your life's work. It is your life's work now. A blocked path doesn't cancel the journey. It becomes a different journey, and often a more honest test of who you actually are than the smooth path would have been. Rule 3. The pause between event and reaction. Here's where Marcus gets almost clinical about his own mind. He constantly reminds himself of the gap, the space between something happening and how he interprets it. His argument is that events themselves are neutral. It's the judgment we immediately layer on top that creates the suffering, the anger, the panic. Someone cuts you off in traffic. That's just a car changing lanes. That guy has no respect for anyone. People are so entitled. That's the story you added half a second later. And that story is what actually spikes your heart rate. Marcus's practice was to catch that half second, to ask before reacting, is this actually happening to me, or is this just my interpretation of what's happening? He's not saying suppress the feeling. He's saying inspect it before you act on it. That inspection, that pause, is where every ounce of composure under pressure actually lives.
Rule 4. Rehearse the bad outcome before it happens. This one's uncomfortable, and it's meant to be. The Stoics practiced something called premeditatio malorum, the premeditation of adversity. Before a journey, imagine the ship could sink. Before a meeting, imagine it could go badly. Before the day, imagine you could lose something you love. This sounds bleak until you understand why they did it. The idea is that shock is what destroys people under pressure, not the bad event itself. If you've never once considered that the deal could fall through, that the relationship could end, that you could get the diagnosis, when it happens, you're not just dealing with the event, you're also dealing with the trauma of your assumptions collapsing all at once. Marcus rehearsed loss constantly, including the deaths of people close to him. Not because he was pessimistic, but because he wanted the actual event, if it came, to be something he'd already made peace with in advance. Pressure doesn't destabilize you nearly as much when you've already stood at the edge of the worst case and looked at it directly. Let's make this concrete, because none of this matters if it stays ancient. You're in a text argument with someone you care about. It's spiraling. Every text that lands makes your thumbs move faster to respond. That's Rule 3, the pause between event and reaction being skipped entirely. The message isn't the problem. Your half-second interpretation of the message is what's driving your fingers. The Stoic move isn't to not care. It's to put the phone down for 90 seconds and ask what you're actually reacting to before you send anything. You're in a job where your effort keeps getting overlooked, and someone less capable keeps getting the credit. That's Rule 1. The recognition was never yours to control. Your work, your standards, your integrity in how you do the job, that's yours, and it stays yours regardless of what anyone else decides to hand out.
chasing the recognition directly is chasing something you don't own. You've got a hard conversation coming up, a breakup, a firing, telling your parents something they don't want to hear. That's Rule 4. Most people avoid rehearsing it because it feels like inviting the pain in early. But the version of you who's already sat with the worst version of that conversation, alone, in advance, walks into the room steadier than the version who's hoping it'll somehow go fine and hasn't prepared for anything else. And when work or life throws you something you didn't ask for, a project falls apart, plans change last minute, you get demoted instead of promoted, that's Rule 2. The obstacle isn't a detour from the path. For right now, it is the path. Complaining that it shouldn't be here doesn't move you forward. Treating it as the actual assignment does. Here's where most people get Stoicism wrong, and it's worth correcting directly, because it turns this whole philosophy into something cold and useless if you miss it. Staying calm under pressure does not mean suppressing what you feel. It does not mean becoming numb, detached, or pretending things don't affect you. That's not Stoic composure. That's just avoidance wearing a toga. Marcus wasn't emotionless. He wrote about grief, about frustration with people he loved, about exhaustion with the job. The discipline was never feel nothing. It was feel it, then choose your response instead of being dragged by it. A lot of guys here control what you can control and turn it into an excuse to stop caring about anything, including their own relationships, their own mistakes, their own growth. That's not Stoicism. That's just detachment dressed up in a philosophy that demands the opposite. Full engagement with life, minus the part where you let every uncontrollable thing hijack your nervous system. So if there's one sentence to walk away with, it's this: you're not in control of what happens to you, but you are completely in control of who you become while it's happening. If this kind of thing is useful to you, stick around. I go through ideas like this every week. No fluff, just what actually holds up under real pressure.